going on, guys? Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, and welcome back to the first press conference reaction of the Premier League season. Erik ten Hag has spoken to the assembled media at Carrington in the Jimmy Murphy Centre ahead of Manchester United versus Wolves this coming Monday, the Monday Night Football at Old Trafford, an 8 o'clock kickoff, British summer time. Ten Hag was asked a variety of questions on a variety of topics today: transfer speculation, fitness updates, why didn't we go for Harry Kane, what's the latest when it comes to Harry Maguire, is there a bit of uncertainty about facing a Wolves side that's just let go or parted ways with their manager. So there's plenty to get into as well. Be sure to smash a like on the like button, be sure to subscribe bottom right hand corner. Oh, it's all going off today, isn't it? It's all going off, not really that much for Man United. I mean, the transfer, you've got parallel transfer sagas ongoing in the Premier League at the moment. Of course, you've got Harry Kane to Bayern Munich, driving to Stansted Airport, driving back, having permission revoked, do fly, don't fly, Spurs saying you can fly, Bayern saying you can't fly, all that kind of stuff. That's ongoing. And then really, you've got the Moises Caicedo one, which is absolutely just insane, really, when you look at it. There was a deadline last night, £100 million on the table from Chelsea, £111 million from Liverpool. The Liverpool bid was accepted. It looked like he was going to have a medical there. Then Liverpool think they got it done. Jurgen Klopp sits in the press conference. We've had a bid agreed. He was called out for the stuff he was saying about Paul Pogba and the United fee all of those years ago. And last season when he was saying it about Newcastle as well, we can't compete. Well, clearly you can. Clearly you can compete with that. But then come to find out that Chelsea said to Caicedo, hey, let's hold off a little bit. We might put another bid in. Then, by all accounts, Caicedo says, I don't want to go to Liverpool, and they're waiting for a Chelsea bid to come in, but it's still got to be bigger than the bid that Liverpool put in. Oh, it's unbelievable, isn't it? It's all going off. But again, that's not in the world of Manchester United. We'll talk about that as we go on, because I'm sure it will come up naturally, organically, but we're here to talk about press conferences. We're here to talk about Manchester United versus Wolves. Lil Yo-Yo with the super chats already out the gate said, how did Fleck not laugh out loud on Sky Sports? Well, in fairness, it was a pretty perfect panel today, there, wasn't it? It was Flex, obviously United. There was, I think it's Harriet from Liverpool, and I forget the guy who was a Chelsea fan. So it was a perfect selection of everything that was going on today, and it was just crazy. I mean, it really is. What a saga that is. It's incredible. I mean, as a neutral to watch, it's absolutely amazing. I can't imagine if you're a fan of either. I mean, the roller coaster of emotions that you must be going through if you're a Chelsea or Liverpool fan. Not that I particularly care, particularly about Liverpool, particularly about Klopp, whinging and moaning those years ago. The day I see footballers worth £100 million, the day I'm out of a job, well, he still looks to be in a job, and people could say, well, it was a long time ago. Just last season, he was moaning about Newcastle, and we can't compete when it comes to the spending. I mean, look at this guy's record. I understand net spend and all that kind of stuff. He bought Alisson, right? Second most expensive goalkeeper of all time. He bought Virgil van Dijk for 75 million quid. That was a record for a defender at the time. Liverpool broke, if that one went through a Caicedo, it still might, the British record transfer fee. Darwin Núñez was the second highest fee they'd ever paid for a player. The midfielder they got from RB Leipzig's the third highest. So let's not go around and say, oh, I can't spend that money when you can. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, let's talk about Ten Hag and his questions and responses in the press conference. We've also got a bit of an update from David Moyes. He's been asked about Harry Maguire and his possible transfer to West Ham. He's spoken a bit about him. So we'll start off talking about Rasmus Hojlund and a fitness update. He was asked by Simon Stone, said, Eric, Rasmus, sometimes no words come out. You're like, are you okay, Simon? And he said, Rasmus Hojlund, a bit of a fitness update. Speculation it could be out a while. What's going on there? And Ten Hag said he had a small issue and he's not on the levels where our players are at this moment, so we'll have to train him. The prognosis is difficult to say, but we are confident, we are positive. So obviously we saw Hojlund training, not with the first team squad yesterday. We saw him at Carrington though. He was on the pitch. It's kind of sad, isn't it, when you've got a player doing an individual training routine, because you've got, the way they always film it, is you've got the full squad doing their drills and the managers and the coaches looking at the player, and then they do this really long pan where they go like that, and right over on the other side of the field, like so far away, even like the Hordens around Carrington, that's the bit where it's not even that nice. And you've got Hojlund there sort of looking over with one coach going, one day I'll get back across to them. So it's not as if Rasmus Hojlund is so unfit he can't even be on the grass or anything like that. From United's perspective, it's a small issue. They're confident it's not a big deal. It's just a couple of weeks, then he's going to play. Laurie Whitwell the other day said that the hope and the target, the aim is that he'll be ready for the game against Arsenal, which is in a few weeks' time. Obviously, it's not ideal because you would want to have your striker that you signed for over 60 million quid available from the first game of the season. That's not the case. I think they thought it would be the case that he would be available, and then he had his medical, and they went, what's that with his back? And then they found out that it wasn't disclosed, and that's why it took a bit longer, but they found out it's not that serious, so they're not too concerned about it, etc, etc, etc. So look, they're still confident, but what it does mean, and I wish someone had asked him about this still might come out, by the way. Remember, these things get cut in half, so we get the embargoed version after 10:30 today, so you never know what might be said about Rasmus Hojlund, but I would love to know from his perspective that timeline of events, how that worked, how they found out about it, and was there any reservations or frustrations about that, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And no one asked about the scheduling as well, which I thought was really curious. They just asked, is he available for Monday, which I think everyone knows he's not available for Monday. The real key question is, yes, he's not available for Monday, but even when he is back, is that whole thing about him not being able to play 2 games a week, is there any merit in that? Is there any truth in that? Or like, what's the case? No one asked him about that. They might have, and again, that might be coming on later on in the press conference, the embargoed part later on today. So we'll have to wait and see with that. But I think that was the more interesting and the more crucial part, because we know he's not going to be available for Monday, but going forward, after that game, let's say against Arsenal, can we rely on him to be playing 2 games a week, or is it a case of we're going to have to manage him for a longer period of time? That's the more interesting thing for me, certainly. But he said it's a small issue. United aren't worried, so they're just going to proceed as per usual. The next question was, what is your view going into this game? What is your view of where the squad is, fitness, form, etc.? And how do you prepare to not have the same start to last season, to this season that you did last season? How do you overcome that? And Ten Hag said, quote, first, you can never compare seasons with each other, but I think we are much further than last season, but you can never compare games. We had a very good pre-season. Our fitness levels are good. We are on really good levels, and I also think our performance levels during pre-season were on a high level. Of course, what's he going to say? We're miles off. We're miles off it. I'm panicking. It's going to be like last season all over again. But as he mentions, there's different opponents. He was happy with the performance levels. They're very confident. It's quite funny because he said pre-season is pre-season, friendly football. I never take a game as a friendly, but it is a friendly at the end of the day. Points, there's a different approach. We are ready. We want to fight. The team is really energetic. Let's work very good for the pre-season, set us up for very good work, basically, for the season ahead. To be honest with you, and look, United have to be cautious because beginning of the season, people can be slow starters. Of course, we had a slow start last year, but we also had a very difficult game. I think we were maybe going into that game against Brighton overconfident, knowing what Brighton are now. And I understand it wasn't De Zerbi Brighton, it was Graham Potter Brighton, but Graham Potter Brighton got him the Chelsea job because Brighton was still doing well at that point. So Brighton at home is a difficult game to start your season with. I don't think we really envisaged that at the time. Plus, clearly we weren't ready. We had Christian Eriksen as a false 9 up front. So I would agree with him. We're probably better prepared than we were this time last year because this time last year, again, with that striker, which we had Eriksen, like we said, in the false 9. Ronaldo was on the bench. Martinez, I think, had played, what was it, a half or something like that of a preseason friendly after the tour. Same with Eriksen. So, and the only other sign at that point was Malacia. We hadn't got Casemiro, we hadn't got Antony. So I would agree with him that we're further ahead, certainly. We're further ahead from where we were last season. Are we completely there yet? No, because we don't have the striker and there's still players to come in. I see people saying, read the Fabrizio Romano tweet on Maguire. As I mentioned, we'll talk about that later on because he was asked about Maguire, and David Moyes was also asked about Harry Maguire, saying that indeed a bid had been accepted, etc., etc. I would assume the latest update about Harry Maguire is, as was mentioned before, that the bid was accepted several days ago, but he's probably the delay that United, and again, I haven't seen the Romano tweets at the moment, but I would assume if there's any delay to it, it's either one, personal terms with Maguire, that they have to figure that out, and two, a replacement, because they don't want to be caught short. I think United's hope would be that the replacement is quite far along, so we let Maguire go and we bring the replacement in, and it's done like that. But again, we'll see that when we get to it, but I would assume that's probably what it is. Next question was about Wolves. Obviously, they no longer have Julian Lopetegui as their manager. They parted ways with him a few days ago. Gary O'Neill, his replacement, the former Bournemouth manager, who was very, very unlucky to lose his job. Let's be honest there. And we've got a preview coming out tomorrow, actually. Flex and a person from Talking Wolves. It's a really, really good preview. I'd really recommend it. It's always more interesting, I feel, certainly as a United fan, to get the perspective of the opposition fans. I don't know the ins and outs, or we don't know the ins and outs of Wolves' squad or pre-season or their fans' frustrations. So preview's going to be coming tomorrow. It's well worth a watch, so keep an eye out for that one. But the question that was put to Ten Hag was, obviously Wolves, it's unusual that a manager is gone before the start of the season, but so close to the beginning of it. Is that any issue? Does that provide you with any problems or anything like that? Ten Hag said, of course there's some uncertainty. We don't know, but it's up to them, and we have to look at our own and prepare for the game. That doesn't change. It makes it also easy. We analyze the team, but it's always about how we play against an opponent. So it's up to us. And I think that was really interesting from what Ten Hag said there, saying that, to be honest, if anything, it makes our job really easy because we don't really know what to expect from them. So obviously we'll do the analysis that we can, and we respect them because you have to respect all of the opponents. But at the same time, all you can focus on is yourself, and that's Sirens in the chat. Come on, Sirens in the chat as always. Sirens in the chat. That's always the United mentality, isn't it, really? Certainly going back to the days of Sir Alex Ferguson was, don't focus on the opposition, focus on yourselves. If you play to your best game, you will beat them. You have a better group of players. You have better players in your team than the opposition. You're at home as well. So don't worry so much about them, worry so much about yourselves. And that was, I remember, I think it was a Rio Ferdinand interview, and it might have been some other people said it as well, that when David Moyes came in after Sir Alex Ferguson, they had years and years and years of, obviously for certain games, certain players, big teams, you focus a little bit on the opposition and go, look, you got to do a job on this guy, or you got to be wary of this person or this tactic. But primarily the focus was on yourself. How do I get the best out of myself? How do we get the highest performance possible? And how do we, beat and therefore we'll beat the team? And under David Moyes, he was saying that a lot of the focus was on the opposition and how to stop the opposition as opposed to how to beat them. And it's just different mentalities. It's not saying that one's better than the other, but at Manchester United historically, and at a big club mentality is all about, again, not so much how do we stop them, it's how do we beat them. And that's certainly what Ten Hag is saying there, saying that it just makes our job easy because the analysis is more difficult because there isn't a big sample size. So we focus on ourselves. If we play to our best game or even close to our best game, we should win. Let's be honest here. If Man United lose or even draw against Wolves at Old Trafford on Monday, you'd be going, what on earth's going on? United should win that game. It's a good game. It's a good opening fixture. Start of the season at home against a side that hasn't done a lot in pre-season, just lost their manager. One would think that's a layup. Now, obviously, football doesn't work like that, but the point is that if you were to ask what kind of game do you want at the beginning of the season, it would be something like that. So let's hope, certainly, United not only get a win, but also make a statement as well. Next question was about team news. Actually, let me get to the super chats because I'm running through this unbelievably fast. Trojan says, Fred, here we go. Yes, that here we go was yesterday for Fred to Fenerbahce. We spoke about that actually this morning at the end of the transfer review, so be sure to check that out and appreciate the contribution as always. Chris says, we're protesting starting from I'm going Monday. He was asked about that, Ten Hag, as opposed to the protest that's ongoing from Monday. So he was asked about that. He kind of sort of dodged the question in typical Ten Hag fashion. Ten Hag, tell you what, Ten Hag knows how to... His media skills, for a guy that the criticism of him when he came in, his English isn't that good, is he really, can he get his sort of thoughts across to the media? The guy is very, very smart. Very smart about how he talks to the media. Very smart about how he deals with the media. Very smart at answering questions a certain way, very smart at not answering certain questions or focusing on one part of it and just dodging another. He's a very, very shrewd character. And again, I think the way he's actually handled the media over the last 12 months, I think lesser people would have failed in certain environments when it comes to this media. The Manchester United press pool is vicious. And we have seen the British media when it comes to Manchester United, actually the global media, when it comes to United, it's on another level. And many people have tried, certainly in recent years, and people have cracked. Even people like Jose Mourinho, known for being great with the media, he's cracked. Louis van Gaal with the media, he's cracked. David Moyes cracked. Yeah. So it just goes to show that it's not easy sitting in that seat, in that room, when things aren't going well. And let's not make any mistakes. At the beginning of last season, it was not going well. The guy was tag teamed by Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher at Carrington, which I then didn't see happen to any other manager throughout the season, by the way. And I want to keep that same energy. I mean, just look at the difference today. I mean, we're laughing at Liverpool and Chelsea and all that kind of stuff. But when that Liverpool bid was accepted, I mean, people were waxing lyrical about what great business it is. And don't get me wrong, Moises Caicedo, wherever he goes, great signing. I think he's got the potential to be one of the best midfielders, not only in the league, in the world. He's still incredibly young, and it makes me sick that we could have had him for £5 million, and who else but Ed Woodward turned it down. Of course, it's frustrating, but you know for a fact, and this isn't me, a bitter Manchester United fan, you know for a fact, if Man United had gone in for 110 million with a sell-on clause, the narrative would be incredibly different. I mean, it would be United are terrible at negotiating, United have their pants pulled down, United are desperate, United splashing cash again with no strategy, all that kind of stuff. We know that's what it would be. But if it's another club, it's genius. Absolute genius. That's what it is. Very, very, tell you what, they should be really impressed with themselves. And it's okay, no, it's fine. Just keep the same energy. And also, if he has a bad game, keep the same energy when you come after our players that we've spent money on. But they won't. They won't. Again, the criticism of Erik ten Hag or the criticism of United is just ridiculous, and some of it's justified. And I've had responses from Liverpool fans this morning saying, United have spent this amount of money over that period of time. We spent about this. I'm not saying that United have spent well. All I'm saying is people like Jurgen Klopp lies. He's full of shit. It is press. Same guy that at the end of last season. It doesn't matter what night European football is on. Whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's the same thing. Same thing. How is that the same thing? They're different. They're different competitions. And that's where I go, look, let's just be fair here. And there's not a lot of fairness. Well, I suppose life isn't fair. Someone I just said, Ian here said, United View FPL code is similar to last season. Indeed it is. If you were part of the United View Fantasy Premier League last season, it will just roll over. If you weren't, go to our socials at United View TV on everything. On Twitter and Instagram, definitely. The code is on there. I mean, I could probably tell you now if I wasn't being so lazy. Let's have a look. Because it was one of the recent tweets. Here we go. It's RYW667. I'll put that in the chat right now. So if you're playing Fantasy Premier League, I cannot promise you that I can commit to a full season of it, because I am like everyone else in that I give up after like 2 weeks, or I give up after I forget to do it and a deadline happens. So the thing is, like tonight, remember there's a Friday night kickoff, Friday night football. So if you're thinking I've got time until Saturday to do it, you don't. I mean, what time's the kickoff tonight? I'm not even sure. Is it 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock? Whatever it is, you haven't got long. So do your team, jump in, and then basically see what happens, really. I mean, you might be like me, like I said, that I just give up after a while. But I've done my team. I'm not that happy with it, to be honest. But again, I don't really care all that much. But if that's your thing, you can join into our league. It's certainly fun, like last year, to see KG come bottom after the first game out of like thousands and thousands of people. It was tremendous. If you haven't already clicked the like button, by the way, guys, we've got over 700 people watching. We're currently at just over 100 likes. So let's see if we can get those numbers up. Let's see if we can get it to 250, 300. And also remember, too, you can subscribe to the United View Clips channel. The link is in the video description. It's also pinned in the live chat. You get those little bite-sized clips of all the great moments throughout United View history. I mean, I think that also, if you do subscribe to the channel, and this would be the good thing, go on those videos and get in the comments about what clips you want to see, because my memory is, I think, just filled with them. Ones that stick out are like, obviously, Europa League intro. when that happened, which was United versus Palace, Ralph's last game. I think about Flex's Spinaroonie, which was against Liverpool. There's a load of great moments. KG's spin with Anthony, that's one too. So go over to the Clips channel, subscribe, and get in the comments and tell us, tell them, tell everyone what clips do you want to see. And they'll be found and they'll be put up there. And you won't even have to search for them. They'll just be there for you in the future. So let's carry on. The next question was about team news. Oh, Peachy. It was from Peachy. Of course it was. Eric, team news, injuries. I bet he was loving it because he wasn't the first question as well. He wasn't the first one. And I guarantee when he's not the first question, he's sitting there going, is anyone going to say team news? And if they do, he just gets up and leaves. He just goes, well, I've got nothing. Ian Beale says, I've got nothing left. So he was asked, team news, Eric, injuries, any update? And because the question was, you've got actually quite a few injuries from pre-season and last season. And Ten Hag said, wow, some of the issues you've mentioned are from last season, like Malacia. He came to pre-season with an issue. He also said that despite some of the people being mentioned, Ahmad, Cobby, Malacia, Henderson, Hojlund. He said we had 30 players on tour who were really fit, and obviously a disappointment about Ahmad and Cobby, absolutely. But that's what happened when you go to the limits. Injuries are not avoidable, but we have a strong squad, and from there we can pick a really strong team. And his point was, and maybe, I mean, obviously he had those 2 games back to back purely for fitness reasons, but his point was, and I don't think it is a good point that he mentioned. He mentioned that, you know, if you look at last weekend, we played Lens on Saturday. Second in Liga last season. Very good team. Strong team. We played Bilbao the next day. Obviously wasn't as strong as the day before, but certainly had senior players in that team. No doubt about it. You had the likes of Jadon Sancho, Lindelof, Maguire, all involved. Ericsson play that day. So his point was that actually we played 2 games back to back in the space of 24 hours, or just over 24 hours, and we played 2 strong sides. So the point being is that we've got a lot of players ready and available. In his mind, it's the absolute strongest squad that he could envisage. Probably not, because he would want Rasmus Hojlund available. He'd want Kobbie Mainoo available. He'd want a couple more players probably in. Sofian Amrabat. He'd probably want Todibo or Pavard, whoever it is we're going to replace Harry Maguire with. So, of course, there are a couple of players there. It's not the totally strongest available squad, but I think his point was that, yeah, we got a couple of injuries, but, you know, I'm happy with what I've got at the moment for the game, respectively, on Monday anyway. As far as an injury recovery timeline, he said Malacia will take some time, same as Ahmad and Cobby, which had been already explained. They hadn't really said what the issue was with Malacia, I don't think. Have they mentioned that? I'm not sure, or certainly a timeline of when he'll be back. And I think that goes back into when the talk about Pavard and maybe why United would go for him over, let's say, Todibo or Tapsoba. I mean, I think it's probably between Todibo and Pavard. And I think maybe why he might just go with Pavard is because he looks at Malacia and says, look, he's got an injury issue at the moment. I can bring Pavard in, obviously, centre-back. He can play centre-back, good with his feet as well. Experienced player, not old either. I think, was he 27, something like that? Not old, experienced, has won everything. World Cup, Champions League, Bundesliga, you name it. Played with top players and is a winner. But also he's got versatility. Again, he can play centre-back, but he can also play right-back. And in a time that Malacia is injured, you've got a player like Diogo Dalot, who can go to left-back, support Luke Shaw possibly, and Pavard can play right-back. Also, Pavard could possibly play centrally in, I don't know, midfield, defensive midfield or something like that, or a bit further forward. So I think he might be looking at Pavard more for a utility point of view. But then when you look at Todibo, it's a case of he's younger, but you can develop him into a longer term successor to someone like Varane, can't you? So I think it's weighing that part of it up. And ultimately, look, price might come into it too. By all accounts, Pavard could be available for like 23 million. Although I did see Florian Plettenberg on Sky Sports yesterday say that part of the problem they have is that they're not sure if they're going to get a replacement in for Pavard too. So they might be a bit reluctant to let him go. But I think he's got like a year left on his contract. And he said to him, look, I'm not signing a new deal. So they might be forced. So certainly, I think they're weighing up the pros and cons, which probably might have delayed this Maguire exit a little bit. Again, we'll talk about that once we get to it as well. But I think that's part of it. But when it does come to Maguire, as I mentioned, he was asked considering people available and people being injured, he said, is Harry Maguire going to be available for Monday? And Ten Hag said, of course. Now, I don't think that's a case of, oh my God, Harry Maguire's staying, what's going on? He's just basically said he's going to be available. I think the point of view would be, if that's not completed by Monday, then he might be in the squad. He's not going to start. He'll be on the bench. So I don't think there's any risk of Harry Maguire's going to play and get injured. I think he'd be on the bench. Varane and Martinez are available. If one of them goes down with an injury, Victor Lindelof will come on. It's just a case of having someone up, just heaven forbid something bad happens to a couple of players or what have you. Now, as far as Harry Maguire, an update from the West Ham point of view, as I mentioned, David Moyes was asked about Harry Maguire and asked about bids being accepted, etc. David Moyes confirmed in his press conference, he said, quote, "We've had a bid accepted from Manchester United for a Maguire deal." Romano then expanded upon this, saying, Manchester United accepted £30 million proposal from West Ham for Harry Maguire 3 days ago. Now, he understands the deal is not done yet because Manchester United want to start talks and pick a favourite candidate as a replacement before letting Harry go, which is kind of what I speculated on earlier. So I think United would be looking for there to be a somewhat of a seamless transition of getting the next person who it's going to be the replacement, Todibo, Pavard, whatever, set up, or certainly getting quite far in that process and then allowing Maguire to go. I don't have any concerns about that falling through. It would appear that if United are just saying we're just waiting to figure out who we're going to get, then there's not an issue once again with personal terms. There's not an issue with oh, he doesn't want to go or anything like that. So I would hope certainly that United can get things moving along quickly. It's a bit weird that they go, we haven't picked a favourite candidate yet. So maybe they're still in two minds about who they want to go with. Is it Pavard? Is it Todibo? I'll put a poll in the chat, actually. I think we did this yesterday, and I think the preferred option of the community was Todibo. But I'll put it in again. Who is your preferred Maguire replacement? It'd be good if I could spell as well. Replacement. Is it Todibo? Or is it Pavard? There you go. Poll is in the chat. I mean, again, I can understand the pros and cons with both. I can understand the pros and cons with this one. I think, like I said, I would be leaning towards Todibo because I think he has a higher ceiling. But I think sometimes when you say that, it does a disservice to Pavard and his versatility and his mentality. I think that's part of it too. Big up KG in the chat as well. It says Owen with the fire and the bomb. By the way, guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to KG's channel. He's in the chat, so you can just click on his little bit there. Go to his channel and subscribe. He's closing in on 30k, I believe it is. So if you haven't already subscribed to him, and if you're not subscribed here, what are you doing? Subscribe, bottom right-hand corner as well. So that's the latest when it comes to the Harry Maguire situation too. Let me check in the chat actually before I move on to the next question, which was about the protest that's coming on Monday as well. Ensar says, today Man City versus Burnley. I have to watch this and hope City lose 6-1. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. Tommy says, Ten Hag is incredibly smart and driven. Sir Alex says he's the best manager we've had since him. Has he actually said that? I'm not sure Ten Hag. Sir Alex would go above the pulpit that much with that. KG that comedian says, yes, we're back. KG, I know, has got a soft spot for the press conference streams. I get him for his Fridays a lot of the time. He always calls me afterwards and says, I just watched the press conference stream. I enjoyed how angry you got. Coco Black says Todibo is injury prone. That is, well, I don't know if that is true. Julian says Pavard's a winner as well. So, yeah, get your votes in with that too. And as Chris Day says, also, whilst you're in the subscribing mood, you might as well earn Wrestle News 365. The link's in the video description below when it comes to that one. Just over 12k on there as well. So there you go. And just a quick update when it comes to the poll already. Over 125 votes. Who is your preferred Maguire replacement, Todibo or Pavard? At the moment, the majority is saying Todibo. 62% of you saying that you prefer him over Pavard. So get your votes in for that too. Let's move on. Talk about the next question. I mentioned it was about the protest. The question was put to the Manchester United manager. Some fans are going to protest at Old Trafford on Monday. How frustrating is it that the ownership situation has not been resolved? And Ten Hag beautifully avoided this question because he didn't answer it. He just spoke about the connection between the players and the fans. He could have said, It's very annoying. I hoped it would have been done ages ago. And I'm sure that's the real answer. I'm sure his real thoughts are, this is a joke. As it's been described, it is a farce. It was the strategic alternatives statement was put out in late November. We are nearly, we are a third of the way through August at this point of the next year. I mean, we are rapidly going to be approaching a year of nothingness, of bullshit, of in-the-know accounts, of sirens, of Qatar flags, of sand timers, of eyes, of nonsense. I mean, it's just constantly over and over and over again, and it's boring. It's
bullshit.
I thought I was connected. It's not. But it's frustrating. Honestly, it really is. Why wasn't that connected? You've ruined my. Fix this. There you go. Now I'm going to hear it again. I've got to press it again. Oh, that was criminal. They heard it. It came through here. It was a disgrace. Oh, wow. This happens when I try and be funny. But he said, and I quote, "I'm sure the fans will support the team. Last season, the connection between fans and the team, we made it stronger in pre-season. You've seen that on the tour. But back in the UK, there's a really, really strong support and a good vibe between the fans and the team." And you know what? He's right. I think there is a very strong connection between the fans and the team. Certainly more than it was when he came in. Let's not forget that. When he came in, I think the relationship between the United fans and the United players arguably was at somewhat of an all-time low. You know, players, we just didn't like them. I remember saying that of all my time of being a fan. I looked at that group of players and just went, I don't even care about how they play. I just don't really like the players. I'm not sure I like the personality. I'm not sure I like the attitude. And that has turned around, and there still probably is a bit of a way to go. But I do like this group of players now, you know, and that's a testament to Ten Hag. You know, I don't think, you know, you very rarely, not all the time again, but you sort of, certainly at points last season, I remember specific games, like, for instance, that Liverpool game at home, coming out of the game, and it wasn't just because we won, it was because of, like, I tell you what, they put a result in there. They put a shift in. They really tried. And I do think that connection's there, but as I said, like, I mean, of course it's got to be frustrating. I mean, you look at, say, the Harry Kane situation, you cannot deny that had the takeover situation had been resolved when we all thought it was going to be, and let's say, to be honest, either way, even if it was Sir Jim Ratcliffe, or obviously if it was Sheikh Jassim, we'd have absolutely have been in the conversation to get Harry Kane this summer. And I know FFP stuff, but they're saying that you could have added in an extra 50 million quid to it. I mean, with the amount of money we've spent, we could have absolutely got Harry Kane if we had new owners. 100%. And it's not even, you're twerking for Qatar. I'm not twerking for anyone. I don't think I can, physically. If I did, I'd have to be stretched out. I mean, I'm not even sure what it is. But when it comes to that, if we had new owners, we would have absolutely been in the conversation for getting a Harry Kane. And you could argue, well, Spurs would have never sold to United. Well, United might have been able to put a really big offer on the table that might have really changed the mind of Daniel Levy, or at the very least, very, very least, once this bid was accepted from Spurs for Harry Kane from Bayern Munich, United could have put an offer down and maybe sort of turned his head a little bit. So, of course, it's going to be frustrating for Ten Hag. And of course he wants stability, and we haven't got that. But are we surprised? Really? Of course we're not surprised. I'm not surprised by that. I think if you're surprised that this has gone on as long as it's gone on, you don't know the Glazers, because it's still about money. It's all about money. That's it. So, as I mentioned, but he dodged the question very well. The next question, speaking of Harry Kane, was, it looks like Harry Kane is leaving the Premier League. How damaging is that to the Prem? Did you like having him? Would you have liked him here at Old Trafford? And Ten Hag said, "We have chosen a striker, and we are really happy. He's a great striker. That's clear. It's clear, eh? He's a goal maker. Apart from that, he has all the conditions, abilities you want to see. It is a miss for the Premier League. Absolutely. We want to play the best." And then, to be honest, and this is what's great about Ten Hag, the follow-up question to that was, you're glad you didn't have to face him? No, that's what I like. He goes, it's a challenge. I want to face the best. So basically saying, no, I'm not happy that Harry Kane's gone. You know, I want to face the best. I always want to put myself up against the best. I want to beat the best as well. And, you know, the part where he says at the start, we've chosen a striker, we're really happy. That's clear. He's a goal maker, etc., etc. That kind of implies that maybe United chose Rasmus Hojlund over Harry Kane. which we didn't. The plan was at the beginning of the transfer window, or certainly the end of last season, the hope was to bring in a Rasmus Hojlund plus a Harry Kane. We were looking for two. And I don't think it's a case of we decided to go for Hojlund over Kane. It became very obvious very early, didn't it, that we're not going to get him. We can't afford him for what Spurs are looking for. I mean, we'd have to do some ridiculous offer to even attempt to turn Spurs' head. And on top of that, if there's another club in for him that isn't in the Premier League, that's the offer that Spurs and Daniel Levy are going to accept. I mean, to be honest, part of me, when I saw like the here we go from Romano and Kane's in the Bayern kit, I'm still a bit stunned by it because part of me just genuinely didn't think that Harry Kane would leave. Not in terms of he'll never leave Spurs, just more of a case of this year. I really thought he might wait it out another year, do an Mbappe, all the power's in my hands, and then next year I can go anywhere I want. I can stay in the Premier League, I can go to United, I can go to Chelsea, I can go to Real Madrid, I could go to City if I wanted to, even though they've got Haaland, I could go to Barcelona, I could go to Bayern Munich, I could do whatever. I really thought he would do that, and it's kind of surprised me, to be honest. I still kind of in a little bit of shock about it. But because as the stuff was going on yesterday about him being in two minds and allegedly clubs sort of reaching out to him from the Premier League and saying, no, stay, we'll make you a big offer for next year from a free transfer. I really thought that he might just stick around. And I suppose the point that the journalist is making is an accurate point where they're sort of saying, Harry Kane, having a Premier League season without Harry Kane being a part of it is just kind of unimaginable, considering how much of a staple he has been of it. I think Spurs as well now, it doesn't matter who they bring in, they are completely screwed because they're just not that team. They weren't that team anyway. You had a Harry Kane nearly scored 30 goals. What was it, 30 goals last season? And they finished 8th, let alone this season without him. Ange Postecoglou, I think, is actually a good coach, and I think he'll do all right. I really do, but it's tough. Without Harry Kane, I don't see what's there for them. And again, I don't know if deep down I really believed he would leave. I thought he might stay for the year, and then next season we'd have the saga that I think United would have been front runners in. You know, takeover situation hopefully resolved, hopefully in the Champions League, another positive season, money to spend. I really thought that. I mean, as of right now, I mean, still some people, and I guess I can understand it. I still won't believe it until I see him holding that shirt, because even this morning about flying there, not flying there, being at a house near the airport, going to the airport, being told to go back, flights being cancelled, etc., etc., etc. Part of you, I suppose, doesn't believe it until you see it, but it does look like it is going to happen at this point, honestly. But again, I was really surprised by it. And it is the fear of missing out, because it did feel like, if he's going to go anywhere, it'll be Man United. And the one summer that he goes to Bayern Munich and not us. It reminds me of I said of Cristiano Ronaldo. When Ronaldo was at Real Madrid all of those years, and every 3 or 4 years United would get linked, and we were like, it's all bullshit, he's not coming, and he'd sign a new contract at Real Madrid, and it felt like he would just use Man United to get a new contract. And then the 1 year, which was 2018, wasn't it? 2018, I believe it was, that it's like, no, he wants to leave. He's definitely going to leave. And everyone was like, he's not going to leave. We've seen it all before. And then he went to Juventus, and everyone was like, oh, he actually left. Crap. It's a bit like that with Harry Kane, isn't it? It's like, oh, man, he left, and he didn't come to us. That sucks. And obviously there's been a lot of talk about the Premier League goal-scoring record. And what I don't understand with that is that the sort of outrage on both sides when I've seen people go, you realise football didn't start in 1992, right? You realise that? Yes, I realise that. But they're talking about specifically the Premier League record, not like the Division 1 record or anything like that. And that's not to put down those achievements, because those numbers are incredible, absolutely staggering. But they're just talking specifically about this specific record, the Premier League record. And to be honest, and I've seen people point this out, and I think this might be true, really, he could go to Bayern Munich for a few years, come back and still break it. It just might be, and if he does break that record, I still don't think anyone else is going to match it. The fact that he was on pace to beat Alan Shearer's record is pretty incredible anyway, because Alan Shearer's record is insane. And that's a player that, you know, played in the Premier League the majority of his career, not all of his career, but the majority of his career. So, it's an incredible story, absolutely incredible story. Jules says, I still don't think Kane's going to buy him. And Eric says nobody watches the Bundesliga. Well, maybe they might now. And I think it's really interesting, too, that you've got the current England captain, Harry Kane, playing in Germany for Bayern Munich. You've got who I think most people would assume would be the future England captain in Jude Bellingham playing for Real Madrid in Spain. And to be honest, I think that is a good thing. I think it's a good thing that English players are less reluctant or hesitant to play abroad than they maybe have been in more recent years. Of course, there's always been those sort of select cases, Gary Lineker playing in Barcelona, or people like Chris Waddle playing in Marseille, or even Michael Owen going to Real Madrid. Beckham, of course. Beckham played a lot in Europe in his career, obviously being Real Madrid, Milan, PSG at the end of it. But I do think English players should be more open to playing across Europe and playing in these other leagues. And again, I think that's significant that you've got these two big English players in Kane and Bellingham not playing in the Premier League at a time that we're talking about how much poorer money is in the Premier League. These big names are not going there. They're going to European leagues, which I think is really interesting. Lil Yo says McManaman for Real Madrid too. Absolutely. So there you go. That was the case when it comes to Harry Kane. And finally, the last question before we wrap things up was about, were we ever seriously in for Harry Kane? Were we ever a serious candidate to sign Harry Kane? And Ten Hag said, I don't think I have to go into that discussion as to why or anything like that, or give an opinion. We are professional. The processes we do are really careful. We consider a lot of things, but finally we make decisions. Not overnight. We study every decision. And again, if you read between the lines there, I think what he's saying is, look, the decision not to go in for Harry Kane, or certainly pursue it for a long period of time, was made early on because we did our analysis, we had discussions, and we realised that, again, it just wasn't feasible. It wasn't possible. The only way, as mentioned, I think the only couple of ways we were going to sign Harry Kane is if he stayed at Spurs this year and we signed him on a free next year. And that was my hope, is that he had said, look, if the first Premier League game comes and I play it in a Spurs shirt, I'm staying at Spurs. And I think that was the hope that United had to kind of latch on to, because if he played that first game for Spurs, he was staying, and he would have seen out his contract, and then United would have been right at the front of that line, and it was been absolutely on. Were we ever seriously involved in those discussions for Harry Kane? And the answer was no, I guess, or unless very early on, very preliminary stuff. I think now it's probably the response is again, it was sort of very early on. That's what it was ever involved in. Certainly, I think I might have dropped out there for a second. If I did, apologies. Don't really know what happened. But there you go. Anyway, guys, be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. What's on tap for the rest of the weekend? Well, of course, it is a Premier League weekend. The Premier League is back up and underway. So stay tuned for the previews, anything like that. Chris Day said, I thought it was me. Yeah, you know what it is? Whenever you're streaming, you just get this little red light. It comes up, and sometimes it doesn't tell the truth. Sometimes it says you're not connected, and you are. For instance, this morning it happened a couple of times with KG, but I'm still talking to KG across the internet, and you go, well, clearly it's not the internet. Clearly it's something involved in this. So I don't know. But hey, it came at the end of the show, so there you go. Anyway, guys, be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. As mentioned, tomorrow there will be a preview for the game against Wolves. Really, really interesting one. Flex catching up with Dave from Talking Wolves. So that's a lot of really interesting, actually, to get their perspective on everything that's going on at the moment. If there's any more breaking transfer news or anything like that, we'll, of course, be all over it. As I mentioned, you can join the UVF Fantasy Premier League. We'll you go onto our social media account, you'll be able to find that there. And then, of course, Sunday, Full View. Full View is not going to be on Monday this week. It's going to be on Sunday because, of course, Monday we're playing. Premier League is back, so we're going to be playing on... We're going to be doing the Full View on Sunday. So stay tuned for that too. And then, of course, Monday, we've got the game too. Anyway, guys, have a good Friday. Smash a like on the like button. Subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. And you never know, might be back for another transfer update at some point. Stay tuned, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Have a good one. Peace.